Hello, people. How's it going? Well, technically it's part one. But Gospel Mark Bible Study. We'll be doing chapter 1, verse 1. I'm, of course, going to try to put this in, segments because I'm not going to go by chapter. I'm going to go by events, which, that means some videos will be longer than others, of course, and others will not be. But this is Gospel Mark, chapter 1, verse 1. My notes. Well, I'm still in the process of figuring how I'm going to do the format, how I'm going to do this. I have a format. This is a little different than the format I used the last Bible study I attempted. This is a little different, somewhat, so it's still a work in progress. But let's see, my Bible. If you don't like how I do it, then don't watch it. I know who you are, and you know who you are. I am who I am. I'm not going to change. But here we go. Mark 1:1, which I probably should have memorized. It's sort of simple and easy. But reading the Bible is important. Chapter 1, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Mark 1:1. Oh, that was real complicated. All right. Summary of the scriptures is, what is the gospel? It's asking, what is the gospel? I'm asking. What does it mean for the people who are asking Mark to write this gospel? Because the people, they were in Rome, and the Roman Christians were saying, we would like a life story of this person we believe in. This Jesus that you have taught us to pray to, worship, believe in, trust in, have faith in. This chair. I really do need a new chair. But so the people of Rome said, look, John Mark, we would like you to write his story. And Peter said, hey, I like the idea. And Peter read what Mark wrote. And he said, hey, this is good. I like it. Spread it around. It was written in Latin. Mark was writing to the Roman church, which would have been predominantly Romans. There might have been some Greeks. There were probably some Jews, other country human people there, but mostly they would have been Romans. So the book of Mark is generally aimed at Latin-speaking people, mostly Roman culture. Who is Jesus Christ? Well, these people who are asking Mark to write this were saying, well, okay, we understand the basics, but who was he? Lack of a better term, help us to flesh him out. Make him more fleshy. Make him more human. Tell us why he is the Son of God. Why is he the Son of Man? Who was he as a person? That's kind of what I think Mark was aiming for, because there's a lot of action in Mark. Mark is always going, because it's the Roman psychology to be doing something. It's very Roman. It's very Roman in thinking and outlook. It's a lot of action, not a lot of standing around doing nothing. Romans like to keep moving. Hence the empire. 3. How does the title Son of God relate to the gospel? Well, I haven't got to that part yet. Because even I have not thought about this question as an answer yet. But how does the title Son of God relate to the gospel? Well, it's about him. Jesus Christ is the Son of God. To the Roman mind, the Son of God would imply Greek mythology, not Roman mythology. If I remember correctly, Roman mythology doesn't have gods and goddesses creating offspring. Greek mythology is loaded with it, which is why Greek mythology is far more fun than Roman mythology. Which is why the Romans stole a lot of Greek stuff. Okay, they borrowed for a long time, but anyway. But the idea of God having a son would be foreign to them. Wouldn't be so much to the Greeks. They'd have a different understanding what the word means, but the Roman mind wouldn't function that way. It would not really understand what a son of God is. The Greeks would, but they would have a completely different definition than John Mark was writing, let alone what John was writing, let alone what Matthew was writing, or let alone Luke, who was a Greek and one of them. The Romans wouldn't have understood it. The Greeks would have. The Greeks don't have, the Romans don't have the same deep stories like the Greeks have. So the idea of the Son of God, I'm not sure if I'm making this clear, but the Roman mind wouldn't understand it like the Greek mind would. The Romans were practical. The Greeks were dreamers or philosophers. The Romans had their philosophers, but the Greeks surpassed them. Where is the gospel in Jesus meant to occupy? Where is the gospel in Jesus meant to occupy in the believer's life? I didn't write that very well. I think what I was trying to say is, how does the gospel apply? How does the gospel interact with our lives on a daily basis? Where does it apply? Where does it sit? Where does it... Yes, I was trying to get the what, who, how, and where. I think I got them all. But the gospel is not static. The book of Mark demonstrates that the gospel is not a static thing. It doesn't just sit there and do nothing. It's about doing something. It's about believing in something, in someone. It's about moving forward. It's about... God is not static. Christ is not static. Even when he was standing still, he was still doing something. It's not static. The gospel is not a static... what's the word I'm thinking of? Not static. What is the word I'm thinking of? Not static. Anyway, it's not a stationary. It's not a stationary act. The gospel is not stationary. It's always either doing something or planning on doing something and then doing it. The gospel is about non-stationary faith. Because faith that doesn't do anything is dead, as James basically says in his epistle. Thoughts. Now on to the thought part of the actually analyzing the verse itself. The beginning, the opening phrase, is an obvious link to Genesis 1:1, which says, "In the beginning." Here, Mark's gospel is establishing, creating a new foundation of the relationship to God and man in Christ. That is what the gospel basically is. God is, in fact, making a new start, a new covenant, which is basically what... It really shouldn't be called the Old Testament and New Testament. It should be the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. I learned that from Zoe Levitt. That man was a good teacher. And he's one of the top 3 teachers in my life that I have. Well, he's in heaven now, but yes. But see, the New Covenant, which is what the gospel is, it's a new beginning. It's a new relationship beginning. It's a new understanding beginning. It's a new way of looking at God and understanding him better and having a closer relationship and having the veil of being ripped, like it was ripped in the temple when Jesus was crucified and died. The temple, the veil in the Holy of Holies was ripped in half, which means that man and God now can interact without, the sacrifices of the temple. It is a new covenant. The Bible, the gospel message is, this is a new covenant. Let's see if I can find it real fast. Well, it's in Jeremiah. It's one of the more famous ones, anyway. Let's see. My Bible said I can do whatever I want. Let's see. But that is what the gospel is. The gospel is a new covenant. It is a... I should have written this down. That's okay. As I go along with this Bible study, I'll improve. That's what I did in the other one, too. But let me continue. When the Old Testament roots of the gospel are explored, we see its importance to even the Jewish mind and scriptures. In the form of the verb in Hebrew means the inbreaking of God's involvement in human history. God is invading in human history. Jesus Christ was God, and God literally invaded the human humans. He became part of human history. He became part of time, literally. Because God the Son became a human being, and he literally interjected himself into human time, into human history. He stepped down and said, okay, the only way I'm going to save these people is become one of them. He became, as I said already, I'm going to read it again, the inbreaking of God's involvement in human history. In other words, God basically said, I am going down there and I'm going to become one of them. I'm going to become part of history. I'm going to make myself known absolutely that I am who I claim I am. Let's see. Why am I not finding it? It's okay. You'll be fine with me looking for it. Just sit there and find your Bibles. I should have looked this up before I started this, and I didn't think that I should have. That's my mistake. Guess I'm looking in the wrong place. Oh, that's okay. I'll find it. It's the verse where God, I believe it's in Jeremiah, and I don't know why I'm not finding it. I might be wrong. I should have looked it up. But Jeremiah was told by God, I'm going to give them a new covenant. I'm going to create in them a new heart. I'm going to cast on their sins I will remember no more. And why I'm not remembering this is bugging me. Because I used to know where this was all the time. But the new covenant literally was going to be a new way God is going to look at us. And a new way he was going to deal with us. And that was through Christ. And he interjected himself into, wasn't what he's doing in the first place. Step down and become human and say, okay, I'm now down here where you can see me, because I'm going to make it clear who I am, even if you're not going to want to see it. I'm still trying to find it. I'm going to find it because I want to. And if I have to go one page at a time. But God, that is what that means. God literally in breaking. It's literally, I'm repeating myself because I don't think people quite understand what Christ, or who Christ was. I don't think people really understand that this was God becoming human, literally taking on the form of humanity, literally entering human history, and literally entering time. As God is outside of time, so for him to literally become part of time is why the incarnation is fascinating. Why it's incomprehensible to us. It's because we don't understand it. There we go. Find it eventually. Let's see. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of Egypt, out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break, although I was a husband unto them, saith the Lord. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, saith the Lord, I will put my law in their inward parts, and write in their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people. And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they shall know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, saith the Lord, for I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sins no more. Jeremiah 31 to 34. I knew I'd find it eventually. I knew it was in Jeremiah. But anyway, on to the next. I guess I keep going back to what breaking it into involvement in human history. Because I like history. But it would be like somebody coming into your house, that doesn't work either. Anyway, let us move on before I really mess things up. Two, the next phrase, Jesus Christ, is a presentation of who the following gospel was about. Mark's audience knew who he was via Peter's preaching, but they wanted to know more than just Peter's sermon on Jesus. I think they wanted to know the stories. I think they were interested in the stories. I think they wanted to hear about the raising of the dead, and they wanted to hear about the miracles, and they wanted to be able to read it. They wanted to be able to have a physical copy of something to say this is who we believe in and why. They weren't asking for proof that he existed. They just wanted to read. Like anybody else, they want to read a story. They want to read who they believe in and why. And Mark wrote one because they wanted Mark to write it. And Peter said, "Okay, I like this idea." Chocolate milk. But I mean, they wanted to know him personally. They wanted to understand him personally. They wanted to. I smashed my finger. They wanted a clearer picture. They wanted a more of a fuller understanding. They wanted they basically wanted a biography. They wanted a nice short little biography that explained why they believe what they believe. They didn't need proof. They didn't want proof of why they believed it. They just wanted to be able to read what he did, what he said, who he encountered, what happened. It is fascinating. The next phrase, Son of God, would be very different from the Roman mind than what Peter was preaching. The idea that Jesus was sent by God and was God was difficult for the Roman mind to accept, but it was what Peter preached. Mark wrote his gospel helping them see the full extent, measure, foundation of the gospel. Told me I was offline for a second. I wasn't offline. But anyway, as I said in the last part, the idea of a son of God would make sense to a Greek mind to an extent. They would understand Zeus having sons and daughters by other people. In their mind, that's what a son of God would be. That's not what Mark is saying, and it's certainly not what Peter was preaching. So it was different. It was a very different definition of what a son of God would be. The Greek mind to the Roman mind wouldn't understand it. The Roman mind would say, this doesn't make any sense. The Greek mind would say, like a son of Zeus. And they say, well, no. Well, that's what you just said. So that's partly why the Greeks on I think Mars Hill had a problem with the Apostle Paul. But the Roman mind was practical. It had practical gods who didn't go around having sons and daughters with earth women, or anybody else for that matter. The Greek gods did. If you know anything about Greek mythology, Zeus was something else. He was the king of the gods and the king of other things too. But the Roman mind needed to understand what Son of God meant on a spiritual sense and the life of Jesus and in their own teaching, their own way of looking at things when it came to the gospel, to the message that Paul preached, that Peter preached, that they were going to have to preach at some point once Peter and Paul were gone and the other apostles were gone. Hopefully I'm making this clear, and I'm almost at 20 minutes already. Good grief, that went fast. I didn't think it would take that long. I thought it would go faster. That's okay. But, the Son of God would make no sense to the Roman mind, as we understand it. It would make some sense to the Greek mind, but for a different reason. Which is why I think Luke's gospel works for Greeks. Luke was written for Greek people. John Mark wrote it for Romans, and Matthew wrote it for the Jews, and John wrote it for everybody, because he was dealing with the Gnostics. Okay, questions I asked were, if you were asked what the gospel means to you, how would you answer? Well, it's a new covenant. The basic, straightforward, blunt answer would be, why the lights just blink off and on? But there's always a critic somewhere. Anyway, the gospel literally means new covenant, as I read in Jeremiah. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord. I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel, the house of Judah. The gospel is a new covenant. That is what the gospel is all about. It's a new covenant. It's a new relationship document. It's a new everything when it comes to God and man interacting, fellowshipping, connecting. I mean, that is what it's about. I mean, it really shouldn't say Old Testament, New Testament. It should say Old Covenant and New Covenant. That's really what it should say. That is what the gospel is. Who is Jesus to you? How would you describe him to someone who really has no idea about him? I answered this question once before, somewhere else, not here. He was a Jew. He was the Messiah. He was God in flesh. He was all man, all God. Of course, you'd have to explain these things to people and help them understand what you mean by that. But he was a Jew. He was the promised Messiah. He was God in flesh, as we all know, because I will read it, because I'm not making all this up, because I'm not a Mormon and I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And well, Jesus is the Word, and he dwelt among us. And, I mean, as this Bible studies goes on, that I will embellish more and more on who was Jesus. How would you attempt to explain Jesus, the Son of God? Well, I just got done explaining that, really, when I was talking about the Jesus Christ and the Son of God stuff. You would have to try to get people to understand that God interacted into human history. He literally, the holy God of the universe became a man. He literally became one of us. He literally stepped into time. I think it's very difficult for anyone really to understand that the God who has no concept of time, because time means nothing to him, stepped into time, and it became something. He actually had to wait. He had to wait for days and for time to go by. So, I mean, that is the best way to put it. Well, as I go on with this Bible study, hopefully I will explain it better, and hopefully it won't be 22 minutes doing it. Well, this was a little longer than I actually anticipated, but that's okay. You get something out of it, cool. So that'll be it. That's it for today, for this Bible study. Next week we will do, hopefully, if I get off my lazy butt. Next week, I am thinking of doing, because I'm trying to do this in segments, as I said. Next week should be chapter 1, verse 2, and probably verse 13. It'll probably be 2 to 2:13. So that'll be next week, hopefully. It'll be a little bit longer than if it is, so I may have to cut it in half, but I might not. Hopefully, people got something out of it. Hopefully, that wasn't too boring, and hopefully, it wasn't too rambling. Well, I might do a test. I don't know. That one came on, so I can't answer anything. I didn't think anybody would, but it may take a while for them to register that. Behave yourselves, people, because I will not, and I cannot, and I don't have any intention of doing so. Have a good day. Passover. Hanukkah will be over tomorrow. Happy Hanukkah. Well, and I do Hanukkah, people. I don't do Christmas. Later. Have a good day. Study Mark.